And then in traditional, we braise and stew certain cuts of meat. Okay? You should really braise certain things. Although you can braise and stew anything. You can braise, in fact, there are some that are actually quite good using the wrong cut of meat. But it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But regardless, there are certain cuts of meat that are more applicable to braising and stewing, and there are other cuts of meat that are more applicable to grilling and roasting. And it's really about how tender they are, right? In terms of a working muscle or a non-working muscle. So, I kind of talk about meat. Meat primarily is three parts. First of all, meat is red, muscle, tissue. You might want to write that down. And then meat is also white, connective. The other people who have me already, they have already written this down probably more than once. But I tell them to write this down, and I tell them to rewrite it, and I tell them to rewrite it again, and maybe even go to a spreadsheet and create something on the computer, or I don't know, something, just go over it again. And meat is also made up of fat. Primarily that's what meat is. Meat is red muscle tissue, white connective tissue, and fat. Now don't get confused with the white connective tissue, because not all white connective tissue is actually white. Okay? There is some connective tissue that is white. There also is connective tissue within the structure of red muscle tissue. Right? There's connective tissue within muscle. Okay, but you cannot see, but it's in there. Then there's fat. And actually, most of what you see that's white is fat. You look at a piece of meat, whenever you see white, most of what you're looking at is fat, although there is some white connective tissue. All right? Good? Yeah? Might as well go ahead and add that in the United States, as I mentioned it yesterday, we grade beef. You have the best for grades, and the grade is based solely on fat distribution. The better the fat distribution, the higher the grade. Okay? So beef is graded on fat distribution, right? Beef is not graded on the health of the animal. They're all healthy animals. Okay? Nothing to do with it. The highest grade is prime. Highest grade is prime. Maybe use a different marker. Highest is prime. What's the second? Choice. What's the third? Select. And the last one is either a utility or inspected. Or just inspected. Okay? So, basically the higher the grade, the more expensive the meat. How much is prime in the United States? Less than 5%. So it's a very small amount. Okay? Is prime available? Prime is available in certain places, and if you go through it, your purveyor will get it for you. And you can't say you can't call them today and say, look, I want all out of the blue. Just say I want 3 cases of New York strip loins prime. They might not have them. You got to maybe tell them a week in advance, and then they'll get them for you. But if you use them all the time, then they would regularly keep those in stock. Okay? But there are some places around. A lot of grocery stores do not carry prime.
Walmart does.
Well,
they have like a small section of prime. Everything else is inspected.
And that's mostly just recently.
Yeah.
And you know, well, who else carries prime now as well is Costco. Has a couple of cuts that are prime. And every once in a while, I will see it advertised once in a while at a grocery store. It's very unusual though, but once in a while. And usually it's because there's a cut of meat that's not really moving very much, and the warehouse wants to sell them, and they reduce the price, and they offer to sell the rest of them at a reduced price to a grocery store. And they just grab them all. And every once in a while, you'll find a good deal, yes.
Does Meijer sell prime?
Not that I know of. Most of that's going to be choice and select. A lot of places don't even use choice. It's just select. There's nothing wrong with that. Because if you're not worried about fat distribution, you know, especially when you're braising and stewing, when you braise and stew something, does it really matter? No. If you're going to use ground meat, does it really matter if it's choice or prime? I mean, seriously, it's about fat distribution. Who cares? Okay, so, and in the United States, by the way, we have excellent beef. Other countries try to copy us because we have very high standards. So I don't know what you've read or heard. We have excellent beef in the United States. Okay? Other countries have good beef too. But we have good beef. Okay? We have good lamb. We have a lot of stuff that we have is pretty good in the United States. Chicken, so-so. They're getting better. Okay, good here? You have, within me, working muscles. Those are the muscles that the animal uses. Right? The muscles that are used, so you can think about it, are going to be the muscles that are moving, and the muscles that hold and carry weight. Okay? These are the working muscles. There are also non-working, and these are the muscles that do very little. They're not flexed very often at all. Okay? And these again are the non-working muscles. Okay, what's the difference? These over here have more connective tissue, which means these are tough, but they have more flavor. Okay? Over here, these have less connective tissue. These are, I'm going to change color, sorry. These are tender, and these have less flavor. Okay? They have less flavor. And a perfect example would be this if we were to look at veal. Okay? Veal, baby calf. It's a young animal. In fact, this is a great example because this also applies young animal versus old animal. Old animal, more flavor, more connective tissue. Tough. Young animal, less connective tissue. Most veal dishes, very rarely you get a veal dish that's just veal. Just a piece of meat. You go to a steakhouse, you get a piece of meat, steak, all the time. Grilled chicken, all the time. Right? But veal, there's so little flavor in veal, it's always accompanied with a sauce, it always has toppings on it. It needs help. It needs some help. Very low flavor. Okay? But same within beef. Right? Is everybody with me so far? Good. I'm going as fast as I can. And for those of you that are new, you're going to have to go maybe cram over the weekend a little bit, spend a little time maybe walking down the meat aisle at the grocery store. You know, security look at you. Working muscles. What are the working muscles? Actually, I like to start over here. The non-working, because these are easier.
Tenderloin, prime rib.
What's the best?
Chicken.
No, tenderloin. We're talking about beef. The best, most tender cut of meat is going to be the tenderloin. I'm sorry, the TV's in the way. I can't move it out of the way. What's second best?
Loin.
The loin. Well, actually, I would have to probably put the whole prime rib second. Yes. Because that's the, and we'll get to the cutting these. This is the whole cut. The third rib. The third would be the loin. The fourth would be the
Sirloin.
sirloin, my favorite. Then we have the
Flank.
top round. Then you have the
Flank.
flank. Alright? All those cuts are the non-working muscles.
Why the rib?
Huh?
Why rib say?
It's the prime rib. Not the rib per se, it's the rib, the meat above the rib. Okay, when you buy the whole prime rib, it's it's underneath the rack.
Oh, the little long.
Right?
Kind of like the strip.
The strip loin is on the farther end of the animal, not way down here. You have the strip, then you have the prime rib back up here.
I don't know what.
Then on the other side, an inside cavity is the tenderloin. The inside cavity is the tenderloin. That's way down here. Okay. These do not flex very often. Okay. And a good example out of all of these, again, this is the best. As we go down the list here, I would probably have to say the tougher ones are going to be these two down here at the bottom. The cheapest one that you can buy right now. Anyone know which one's the cheapest one?
No.
The top Top round right now is selling for about $2 and I'd say 50 cents a pound if you buy it whole. The flank steak, out of control. Probably $9 a pound right now for the flank. How about sirloin? Probably $5.99. How about the loin? Depends kind of where you get it at, but I would probably have to say $8.99 again. The Pro Prime rib, probably right in there about the same thing, and the tenderloin probably depends where you buy it, $11.99. And we're talking about most of these for choice. Choice, the grade.
Choice.
Yeah, not prime, choice. If you're looking at prime, double it. Pretty much. But every once in a while, like I'll see a place selling sirloin for $5.99 a pound for prime. I mean, just right, that's the same price as choice. That's a good deal. Okay? So these are all the tender cuts. These are the non-working muscles. When they're whole, you would roast them. Okay? When they're whole, you would roast them. If you cut them into small pieces or steaks or medallions or cubes, you would not roast them anymore. You would instead grill them, broil them, saute them. Okay? Also, you could take many of these, cut them into medallions or cut them into cutlets, right? Some people would also call that scallopini, where you slice it real thin. That would be nice. In fact, let's say you're going to make, I'm sure you've all heard of this. Let's say you're going to make veal parmesan. Or maybe you're going to make veal marsala. Or veal piccata. We're sticking with veal. Right? Which is going to be a little scallopini or a cutlet. Very thin. Usually pounded out. Where do you think you like, what cut would you like to have that from? What do you think? It's one of the ones that's up there. Most people, curious enough, most people buy it from the leg. But does that make sense? Chef? No, it doesn't make sense, but what about the leg? It's going to be cheap. But where should it come from if you're going to make veal parmesan or veal piccata or veal scallopini?
If it's veal, it's like not really tough, and then already you can just pound it out, and it's a thin cut. But you don't do it from the, well, you could do it from the leg.
I know, most people do. I just said do. Most people do it from the leg, but what? Hey, come on in, Jillian. Now, for a veal, you're going to buy the top round. You're going to buy a nice veal top round, which is pretty lean. You're going to slice that nice and thin, and that's going to be the preferred one. You don't have to go way up here to these. It's not necessary, really, because this is going to be good enough. You got to make money at the end of the day, too. If you go to this, you ain't making no money. You're going to have to charge $69 for veal parmesan. That's not going to fly. All right, now for the other side. Somebody's going to have to maybe share this information with Jillian coming in. Missing a big chunk of stuff, Jillian. We have this side now. This was the non-working muscles, right? With me? Right? These are the tender cuts. So this side is the working muscles, the tough cuts. What are all the other tough cuts of meat?
Bottom round, shake, shoulder, neck, eye round, knuckle, short rib.
Right.
Keep on reading.
Bottom
Oh, my
round,
nose.
eye round, shank,
Shoulder.
knuckle, shoulder, brisket.
Short rib.
What else?
Short rib.
Yeah, short ribs, tail, tongue. I mean, almost every single other cut. Blade steak, mock tender. Almost any other cut that you see in the grocery store is tough. Okay? So, would you take those tough cuts and roast them when they're whole? The answer would be no, they're tough. You don't make roast beef out of a piece of bottom round. It will taste delicious, but it's going to be chewy like eating a shoe. It won't be good. And neither will any of these other things. Now, there are some ifs and buts. There are some ifs and buts. You could slow roast at a really low temperature and end up with a decent product, and people do that. But that's ifs and buts. You as a chef, you're supposed to know really what you're supposed to use when you have the right cut for the right. You're going to make shortcuts in your life, but that's up to you. Those are all the tough cuts. If you cut these up into small pieces, cubes, medallions, steaks, would you grill them?
No.
Medium rare? No. You do not. These are braised and stewed. These are braised and stewed over here. Okay? So, in this class, what are we doing? We're shallow frying. We are sauteing. Are we going to be sauteing and shallow frying this stuff? No, we're going to be sauteing and shallow frying this stuff over here. Okay? Because the reason I'm mentioning this, I got quizzes coming in next week, and as well as I found a final from this class, I looked through all my stuff. I taught this class. The last time I taught this class was 5 years ago. And I found all my stuff. I found quizzes. I found a final exam. I was like, woohoo! All right. And I was reading it like, ooh, this is a good final exam. But I have some quizzes that kind of correlate with the final exam. So you're going to be getting these next week. So let me show you here. I have a question here in relationship to that. It says, let me find the one it's on. Oh, here it is, sorry.
That's what it reminds me of.
For example, I have a question that says, choose the item best suited for shallow frying. A, chicken leg quarters and breaded fish. B, chicken breast cutlets and beef tenderloin medallions. C, chicken leg quarters and beef tenderloin medallions, or D, none of the above.
B.
Yeah, the best answer was B.
What was B?
Then I have saute. A, chicken wings. B, shrimp. C, lamb shanks. D, pork ribs. Okay, so it's questions like that. All right? There are some that are a little bit more specific, really specific to those cuts. You might want to familiarize yourself with those. Okay? Also, along with this, I'm going to erase. Everybody's good? I suggest to quiz yourself, go to the grocery store meat aisle,
In uniform.
and just, yeah, okay.
Go
Well,
in
you want to pick up a side job cooking for somebody, yeah, wear your uniform. Just look at the cut of meat, because the grocery store calls everything cut into a steak. That doesn't mean you grill it. They call everything tied up with twine a roast. And that doesn't mean you roast it. Because an eye-round roast is a beautiful thing, but it's tough. You would braise it, you would not roast it. So it's a good way to practice or study. All right, good. And then the last thing that kind of goes with this is that there's a temperature range that correlates with rare, medium, medium well, and well done. Okay? And these there's a range that works really good for me and will work good for you. I recommend you memorize it forever and ever. It's going to be on my gravestone.
Rest in peace to know about medium rare.
Here lies here, medium rare. This range really works good. And the reason why there's a bit of a range is some people have a little bit of a different idea of what rare, medium is. So we use a little bit of a 10-degree range that should work fairly well for you. And I lean more towards the lower end of the range. So I'm going to start down here at the lower area. Okay, not the higher area. Okay, and this works quite well. Okay, so you might want to look at that too, because I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to ask you some questions on the quiz as well as the final in regards to these temps. If you're going to culinary school, you should know the temperature for medium rare. Okay? You do not serve chicken medium rare. Okay?
Serve it 165 or higher.
In fact, the minimum temperature for chicken is 165, which is under the well done. It's under well done. But I suggest for legs and thighs, you take it up another 10 or 15 degrees and go all the way up to 180. for legs and thighs. And the reason for that is legs and thighs got thick bones, a lot thicker than the breast area and the rib. Got a lot thicker bones there. Okay? So that's number one. Number two, there's a lot of veins and arteries carrying blood to the legs. Right? And also those legs got a lot of movement. They do a lot of work. And that's why you got all that blood flow there. Okay? So those are the temperature ranges. Good?
Yes.
Fantastic. Meat primarily is still reasonable. Meat primarily is still pretty reasonable for the most part. There are some things that have gone out of crazy a little bit, like pork ribs, baby back ribs are insane, right? $6, $7 a pound sometimes, right? Brisket, short ribs, oxtail, skirt steak. We don't have skirt steak on that list. Skirt steak's out of control. Skirt steak 10 years ago, $1.99 a pound. 10 years ago, $1.99 a pound. Skirt steak today, you go right now to Publix, it's probably $9.99. It's probably $10. In fact, I've been in a store where the skirt steak was the same price as beef tenderloin. Now that's crazy. So that just goes to show you, they're slaughtering cattle. They're not slaughtering cattle for tenderloins. And that's why tenderloins are still relatively cheap. They're slaughtering cattle because they're going through all these skirt steak, they're going through all this brisket, they're going through all these bottom rounds that are being used mostly for deli meats. So they're using some, and what's happening with the price, right? Supply and demand. If the people want to buy all these cuts and the supply gets low, guess what happens to the price? So as a chef, you got to think, okay, do you want to be buying the cuts of meat that are expensive and then you having to sell them for a really expensive price? Because that's how it works. So that's how it works, because that's next I got to put up here. The next thing. If something costs you